Hi, I'm Erica Mabian, iSpark STEM Coordinator with Kansas City Public Schools, and this is STEM for grades 4 through 8. Today we're going to break down problems into smaller, manageable steps, into sub-problems to facilitate a program development process. We have a project that we're going to be participating in today, so I'm really excited. So let's get started. Today, what you're going to need is a piece of paper to take down notes so that you could replicate this project at a later time. For the project, you're going to need a small bowl, basin, or you could do it in your sink. You're going to need marbles or maybe 15 pennies or something small that you could use as a weight. And you're also going to need about a gallon of water to put in the basin and aluminum foil sheets. Regular aluminum foil, not the heavy duty. Let's take a quicker look into our lesson. Get ready to learn. Our criteria and constraints are as follows. Criteria and constraints. What do I mean by that? What I mean by criteria, when you start to do this project, there are certain things that you're going to want to think about. For one, our foil sheets are going to all need to be the same size. That way, if you replicate the project, you can see how it may be differentiated based on using the same size sheet and folding it in different ways. Next, the constraints. When you build your boat out of your aluminum foil, you need to know that it must hold the weight of the things that you choose. Say it's your 15 pennies or your marbles. Make sure that your boat that you construct will hold the weight of those without sinking. Next, let's think about the process. We use something called the design process when we are going to do projects or experiments. The first part of the project is to ask questions. What is the problem? Well, in this situation, the problem is we need to create a boat that can withstand the weight of the materials that we're going to use. Next, let's think about what are some possible solutions. Maybe you discuss this with your family, or you make a list of it in your head or on your paper. Finally, the questions you ask yourself are going to determine your step-by-step process that you're going to use in order to construct your boat. Let's look at step 2, planning it out, your strategy. Let's think about your strategy. Well, the first thing in the design process is we create a sketch. Maybe you're going to use a thumbnail sketch, and that's just a quick sketch. It's just flat on your piece of paper, and you just get out the details roughly and not specifically about how you want to construct your boat. Next, imagine your prototype. Make a mental picture of it and consider how it will look like whenever you have it in the basin of water. At that point, you may want to make an isometric sketch. That means that you're going to do a 3D version of your sketch so that you can see the dimensions, the size, the width that you would like to construct your boat out of your aluminum foil. And finally, you're going to consider the criteria. Remember the criteria and constraints. That boat that you make is going to need to hold the weight of the items that you choose. And the purpose of your design is that you're going to make the boat. So let's keep going. Next, it's time to make your model. When you make your model, always consider those criteria and constraints and select your most appropriate design. That means that if you've chosen a thumbnail sketch or an isometric sketch, you want to use the one that's going to give you closest to the thing that you can replicate when you decide to build your prototype. Now, testing your prototype. That's when you finally get your boat that you've made with your foil and put it in your water so that you can see what happens. I would do this in phases. Set it in the water and then start to add your weights. Evaluate your design. Ask yourself questions based on what you see. Do you see air bubbles? Is it starting to sink instantly? Is water starting to seep in from sides to sides or front to back? And then finally, you're going to analyze what happens as a result of adding your weights inside your foil boat. And the last part is reflection. Reflection is where we get a chance to think about how smart we are getting from this type of activity. What changes would you make when your boat sank to the ground? Did it withstand the constraints? Did it hold your weight? How could you improve that boat the next time you do it? And how will you communicate your successes and your unsuccessful design process? So those are ways that you could go back and redo your boat and test it out again. This has been Erica Mabian with KCPS Homeroom. Let's start our project now. Let's get ready to make our prototype. So now we have our model, and this is based on my first isometric sketch. When I did my isometric sketch, I thought about the 3D model and how I wanted it to look. So I built up the sides, and some sides are shorter than the others, but I thought this would replicate what was in my sketch. So let's test it out. So I'm going to add about 5 marbles each time so that we can watch as I'm putting in the marbles to see when it floats and when it starts to sink. I'm evenly distributing the marbles across the whole base of my boat so that I can make sure that the weight is evenly distributed and it sinks. So when we get ready to test out our next boat, we were going to count our marbles and see how many were in there so that when we do it the second time, that we can make sure that those even out with the same amount of weight. So I'm going to pull those out. All right, now I have them all out, and I'm looking at my previous design, and when I get ready to make my second design, I'm going to do some changes. The first time I folded it down the middle, but I'm thinking that it may need to be a little bit more strong, so I'm going to decrease the size of my boat significantly by folding it an additional time. So this time, the base of my boat is going to be much smaller than it was initially, but the bottom is going to be significantly more strong to withstand the weight of those marbles. So hopefully, I will be able to get more marbles inside and it still will float. So let's take a look at the second prototype. The second prototype is different than the first one in a lot of different ways. It's about half the size, but the base of it is a lot more strong. So when I think about that, the constraints will be a little bit different for each boat. Next, we're ready to test it. Let's test out the second prototype. When you're watching, I want you to evaluate my design, just as you would your own when you do this experiment at home. Ask yourself questions about what you see now versus what you saw at the beginning, and then we can analyze those results. So here we go. I'm going to be sure to evenly distribute the marbles so that, it sank. So let's think about this. Did the new boat have enough reinforcements on the bottom? Were the sides high enough to withstand the weight of the marbles? So let's take a look at the difference. The sides are smaller here. They're a little bit longer here, but that didn't help my design. It did not withstand my constraint. So I was not able to put as many marbles in this boat as I was this first boat. And then how could I communicate that? So I would go back to my sketches, look at them, and see what I liked about the first one that was different than the second one, and I could reevaluate my design and come up with a third boat. Maybe you could have a contest at your house to find out who can make the best boat that it could hold the criteria and constraints, and just play around with it and have fun. If you find a design that you really like and have your experiment, you could tweet it out to us at KCPS or hashtag me at 312Mabian and tell us about your experiment and how you design your boat to match the criteria and constraints. Be sure to hashtag us at KCPS Homeroom. We love to hear about all the things that you were learning during this process of making a design. Have a great day.